Hello, Year 10. Isn't it nice? Well, you don't know yet, but it's nice from my point of view to be moving into a new topic, one that is hopefully going to be a little easier for you guys to do. Obviously, starting a new topic gives us a chance for a bit of revision and a couple of skills that are basic that everyone can approach and doesn't rely on anything from earlier. So, this is going to make some of our lives a lot easier. The topic we're moving into is data and statistics, which means, of course, we're going to involve some graphs, some averages, some of those things you actually are reasonably good at. We're going to just revise over those. We're going to do a little bit of new stuff, and hopefully, you'll all find this topic a lot easier than the last one. But let's jump into it. Data. Data is a fancy word that really just means information. There is tons of data out there. People are worried about the government collecting our location data using this COVID 19 app. Probably they're not going to have anything useful to do with our data unless we come across other people who've got the virus, so we might as well have the app. There are people who are worried about all sorts of data, and yet we're worried about that, and yet Google has almost everything because it keeps track of us on our map. It knows where we go. Google has amazingly even given ads to people for pregnancy type stuff before they even realized they were pregnant, just because it predicted with all the data it's got that that is something that was just about to happen. It is amazing the data we allow out. And of course, someone has to be able to analyze that. We're going to look at a couple of the ways to do that. But for today, we're going to look at the different types of data, the types we can store, and how we would collect it. So, firstly, let's have a look at this. Who is it that we're going to get data off? What data are we going to get? How are we going to collect it? These are basic ideas. And so, I should have actually said this. I haven't said this before. If you guys need to take notes during these videos, you can. You can always pause and write things down. If you don't feel the need to, at the moment, I'm not making a fuss with most of my classes about copying the theory off the board. I can give you this electronically. You can print it out for all I care. Normally, it's so that you concentrate and you don't get too distracted talking to your friends. That's probably not happening at the moment. But please, if I jump over things, pause this, read through what's written there, because I don't want you to miss out on stuff just because I'm getting a bit excited and I'm not waiting for you. Um, so, how do we get the data? One of the things we can do is ask people. We can collect data off people, and there are two methods that are kind of well, the two alternatives on how we collect data. One is we run a census, and a census is where the data is collected from everyone. About everyone, we find out all the details. The government runs a census every 5 years of every household in Australia, and it collects all sorts of information. That data is now up on a website. We can actually look up a lot of that data, and we might do some of that later in this topic. A sample, on the other hand, is a much more manageable way to do it, where we only select a smaller group. If we selected all of New South Wales, we would consider that a census of New South Wales data. We wouldn't say it's a sample of Australia. But a sample might be you only ask a third of the people in our school something or other instead of asking everyone. Now, the reason for a sample is obvious. It's going to be quicker, it's going to take less time, but it's not going to be as accurate. And we have to make sure we avoid this thing called bias. Now, a bias means a weighting, a leaning in a particular direction that is unfair and disadvantages some people. So bias is something to be avoided. Obviously, if we wanted to make sure, well, if we wanted to create bias, we could do a survey. We could run a survey of a sample of people at our school. Hey, let's just ask year 10 because they're the only people who really matter, aren't they? As the teacher's point of view, let's ask anyone except year 10 because year 10 are annoying and then are probably not going to behave when we ask the survey. Who knows? There's both sides to that kind of option. So let's have a go at this. What are the disadvantages and advantages? Well, advantage, disadvantage, census, sample. And I always want to call them surveys, but you give everyone a survey sheet, but it is a sample that we are taking. We are selecting a smaller group of people. So let's split up this table. Anytime you are asked for advantages and disadvantages, this is a really reliable way of doing it because you can clearly compare what's going on. A census, the advantage is that it's perfect information, which in reverse, the disadvantages of a sample is it risks bias and it's less accurate. What is a disadvantage of a census? Well, it takes too long. And it usually costs too much in terms of time or in terms of money. The advantage of a sample is that it's cheap and it's quick. It may not, or I should say cheaper and quicker, because it's not like they're going to take 10 minutes to do a sample of people across Australia, but it is definitely cheaper than a census. Now, what data can we collect? We have touched on these words before in year 8 and probably revised them again in year 9, but all of the data we collect, and this is really important when you're storing things in a computer, is working out how to store it in an accurate way. We can store words, which are called categorical data, words, and the words can be completely in any random order, words, like what is your job, or they can be something where it is actually in order, like, oh, how good would or how much effort and work did you put in last week? I have to put into the reports. And I can say you put in a minimal effort or a decent effort, or you put in nothing at all. And those are clearly there is a higher, a middle, and a lower rating, which could be turned into a number, which is really how the maths and the analysis of our data comes in. We actually look at those as numbers. So we like this one, we like numbers. This one is a bit tricky in terms of doing analysis. So we've got to be careful with these, and we might not always want types of data that we could just easily collect. Numbers could be discrete, so there could be numbers that are always whole numbers or numbers that have specific measurements or rounding off, and then there are numbers where any level of accuracy is possible. The last thing to quickly talk about before we start is how do we get our data? Well, if we can collect it ourselves, the other thing to realize is there are lots of places where the data is already recorded, where we can just grab it already. And we're going to do a bit of that again later in the topic. But for now, let's just get started with some textbook work. Stick with the simple textbook work in your book, upload a photo. It took me a long time to make that quiz thing for last lesson, so I'm not about to do another one of them already. But textbook work, upload a photo, and we'll see how we